Thank you very much, Matt. Yes, we're looking forward to another great day here at Interlagos. Beautiful weather conditions again, absolutely cloudless sky. Temperature coming up to 9 o'clock in the morning, already up to 25 degrees Celsius, as you can see. Humidity a little higher than it was yesterday, but it is an absolutely gorgeous day in Brazil. And everyone looking forward to these 2 free practice sessions this morning, and then, of course, the all-important qualifying coming up this afternoon. And John, we watched this car yesterday. There it is, that brand new Ferrari. Let's see what it can do today.
Well, Michael Schumacher thrilled us all initially in the Friday session. The first session, of course, he was quickest. Then it didn't quite go so well for him in the second session. Towards the end of the session, he had that rather unusual looking spin. He got the back of the car out, he corrected it, but then it seemed to take a head of its own and went back the other way and spun across the grass and just clipped the tyre barrier. He actually praised that new high friction tarmac that was there as well, because had he thought it was not there, he may well have damaged that car more substantially. In effect, there was little damage whatsoever. So Michael Schumacher looking forward now to these 2 45-minute sessions. He knows that the second one of those will give him the first real glimpse of what the Ferrari's potential is going to be here this weekend. But bearing in mind what Ross Brawn just said, they think this is really a circuit that's going to suit Williams BMW, but mostly Michelin. And that's the reason why they've decided to bring the 2002 car to the Brazilian Grand Prix. It's a major learning lesson, but they could go away from here with a lot of bonus points to boot.
Well, let's just run through the positions from yesterday. Michael Schumacher having that interesting day in the new car, 5th fastest in the end. Fastest overall, though, was David Coulthard, driving for McLaren Mercedes. Montoya ended up 2nd fastest. McNish in a great 3rd, and we're looking inside the Toyota pit there as well. McNish was 3rd, Schumacher, Ralph was 4th, Michael Schumacher 5th, as I say, and Kimi Raikkonen rounded out the top 6. Peter, I gather you've got some interesting information for us. Hope to hear from Peter Windsor. Peter, can you hear me?
Yes, I can indeed.
Peter, I gather you've got some information for us.
That's the question, Ben. Yes, that's right. Can you hear me okay, Ben?
Loud and clear.
Good. Yes, no, Matt was calling me Dr. Windsor earlier, and this time I have to be medicinal because it's talking about massage. Several drivers yesterday actually had massage between the 2 sessions, to your disgust, John. And part of the reason for that is because of the bumps on the straight. And in the restaurant last night at the hotel, there were several drivers saying they had quite bad headaches. And it's mainly because of the pounding they're getting down the pit straight here. The bumps there are just phenomenal. And the other thing I'd say is watch out for that downhill left-hander towards the end of the lap. That's where Juan Pablo Montoya went off last year, and this year it's a very, very iffy corner, and there's talk about will it be flat in qualifying or not. So I think that's one corner we should really be watching the quick guys on.
Okay, we'll watch that closely. That's the Mergulo corner. We'll try and point that out, John, once the cars get on track, which is not too far away now. Yeah,
just, I mean, this idea of drivers suddenly now under all sorts of physical pressure and whatever, the reason that they've got a back problem is because the teams are running the cars so low to the ground, because that's the way they gain performance. Now, if a driver feels he doesn't want to go through the discomfort and the pain, tell him to tell the team to raise the car up. He'll lose performance, and I promise you, they'll put up with the pain for the performance. So it's all, you know, for God's sake, grow up, some of these guys.
It's all relative, isn't it? We're looking at one of the Brazilians competing here today, Enrique Bernoldi, driving for the Arrows team. And they were pretty happy with the way the car was performing yesterday. They were close on times. Heinz-Harald Frentzen 11th fastest, and Enrique himself was 12th fastest. That put them just ahead of Panis in the BAR and the Jaguar of Eddie Irvine, which was down in 14th place. We also saw some good performances from Jenson Button, 8th fastest, and a little better than we have seen for Jacques Villeneuve. He was 9th fastest in the other BAR. But as we said, beautiful weather conditions, and you can see a great turnout of fans here in Sao Paulo this weekend. This huge sprawling city which extends its reach right down to the track here, which when it was first opened way back in 1940 when they first ran races here, was quite some way away from the city centre. Nowadays, John, it's almost a part of the sprawling suburban jungle that is Sao Paulo.
Well, I think it's, with Mexico City, probably the largest city that I've ever been to, and it is just enormous. And Interlagos, I first went to the circuit in 1974, and it was a good 20-kilometre drive from the city centre out to the circuit. Now it's just suburbia. And I mean, Sao Paulo and Brazil, I mean, it's just unbelievable. You've got to go there to really understand what these countries are like. Driving on the road, the traffic, the smog, it is just a different world.
Well, we were talking about the times from yesterday. There was a stunning performance from Alan McNish, his first visit to the track in the Toyota, and I do believe Nick Damon has caught up with him. Nick.
Alan McNish, definitely the most impressive performance by any of the drivers yesterday. Never been here before and third. Where'd that come from?
I think we've generally on Fridays been pretty quick. The car actually worked pretty well straight away, and I think also I've got to put a little bit down to Michelin, because they brought two good tyres, and we tried both of them yesterday and both worked very well. So I think it was a sort of combination of things, but today I think it'll be balanced out a bit more. I can't see us staying third.
So therefore, where do you think you will be come 2 o'clock?
Depends on some of the others as much as it depends on us. I would hope that we'd be able to qualify somewhere, but probably a little bit better than we did in Australia.
Is the team surprised how well this car's going this year?
Yeah, I think we are, and also surprised how consistently competitive we've been. I certainly expected us to have some good races and some bad races, but so far we've been able to dial the car in reasonably well in 3 tracks. I'm sure that when we get back to Europe, some of the competition will up their game a bit, so we've got to develop at double the speed.
Thanks, Bob.
So Alan McNish will be starting his 3rd Grand Prix here this afternoon. The winner of Le Mans with Porsche back in 1998, now relishing his Formula 1 opportunity and doing a fine job. Came very close to getting 6th place in the last Grand Prix in Malaysia. We're just a few moments away literally now from the start of the first of the 2 45-minute free practice sessions that kick off proceedings here on a Saturday morning in Brazil. Ralf Schumacher not quite as happy as Juan Pablo with the handling of his Williams BMW yesterday.
But again, the team will have different programs for both drivers to try. And particularly in the Williams team, they spend Friday doing their homework for Sunday's Grand Prix. And it's very important for a team to have that discipline, because you so easily get sidetracked. You see a competitor suddenly doing a time, think, well, we have to respond, and the initial reaction is to throw fresh tyres on and chase the time. Well, these teams are now so experienced, they know what they've got to do. They'll not get led into that trap. They'll follow that principle in this first 45-minute session this morning. Then we have a 30-minute break, then into the second 45-minute session. That's when we will begin to see the stimulated qualifying runs beginning to appear. And certainly the last 10-15 minutes of these sessions, I think, are just magic.
Well, let's hope that we see them use their new tyres at the end of the session. In Malaysia, not everybody decided to put new tyres on at the end of the second session, so we didn't get as clear a picture, perhaps, of their qualifying potential as we do on some occasions. There's the man who was fastest yesterday, though. Excellent run all day for David Coulthard. Had a minor spin early on. We're just seeing the session beginning now, but that minor spin behind him, he was on the pace all the time, looked confident in the car, throwing it around, and let's hope that McLaren Mercedes have upped their performance a little bit, and of course that they have some reliability this weekend.
Well, I think the reliability really is the most important thing, because without the reliability the performance is virtually irrelevant. So they really need to get back into a point scoring position, but principally on the podium. Nothing less than 4 points, ideally 6, but a sweet 10 points to match back-to-back victories for McLaren last year and this year would be the perfect result for the Woking team.
Jacques Villeneuve preparing, former winner at this track in 1997, and he was reasonably happy with the performance of the car yesterday, but we know that BAR a little bit for performance. Interesting to note his comments. He's been very positive about the changes that Dave Richards has made at BAR, and said it's about time too. Well, an interesting comment when you bear in mind that it's his manager and friend Craig Pollock who was running the team. Almost implied that he felt that perhaps those changes should have been made when Craig Pollock was in charge. Yeah,
it's a bit of the pot calling the kettle black, I think, that one, because the team was very much Jacques' team along with Craig Pollock, and if Jacques wanted something, it seemed to be easily attainable for him. So now an entirely new regime, and a much more, I would say, business-like regime in control at BAR. I mean, Jacques Villeneuve ain't anybody's fool, believe me. He's being extremely well paid for his position in the team. He's now going to have to justify that pay more than he's ever done before. And as a driver, he's the second most successful driver in the field. After Michael Schumacher, Jacques Villeneuve is the only other world champion competing here today.
Yes, as you say, paid extremely well. Around 11 million it's reckoned. So a very comfortable paycheck indeed. It's £11 million. So Jacques certainly gets his money, but the question is, will he still be with the team after all the changes have made, and particularly for next season? We'll wait and see on that one. Meanwhile, reigning world champion Michael Schumacher on board the new Ferrari, the 2002 car, being used in anger for the first time here in Brazil this weekend. It looked good yesterday. He did have a couple of spins, as we talked about, but it still looked as though it could be a potential threat to Williams BMW. There's a quick look at Kimi Raikkonen, who spun out of the first free practice session yesterday and lost a good number of laps as a result of that.
And losing any session is always a problem with a team. It sets them back. Kimi Raikkonen, look at his eyes, look at the concentration. Looking up at the data screen sitting on top of the dash, just getting an idea of those that are out on track right now. Currently we've got 5 cars on track, and normal thing is go out and come straight back in, so there's no information that he can learn from. But Kimi Raikkonen very aware that that little error cost him one session, and it's very difficult to claw back the time lost in the remaining sessions.
Now Felipe Massa, let's just take a quick look at what's going on there. Well, nothing very much. We just had a quick look at him coming out and coming in. A couple of cars on track at the moment, Mika Salo and Jarno Trulli, but they're just making sure the cars are running okay. Nobody's really fully up to speed. And Rubens Barrichello, the man that so many Brazilian hearts will be hoping will go to victory this weekend. Well, he didn't have a good start to the weekend yesterday with a couple of spins. Problems with the traction control as well, which didn't help.
Well, I think that we saw one of those spins, and in fact, on the review, we've seen that that Rubens had the right front wheel right over the curb and on the grass, and I think that's probably what did one of the spins. And of course, once the car breaks away like that, that's not really what traction control is there to do. Traction control is to control the throttle and the power through the rear wheels. If you make a driving error, traction control won't help you.
So here comes Rubens Barrichello coming down pit lane to join onto the circuit at the CNRS. It's quite a drop downhill as they turn left at the end of the pit lane here and then roll out onto the track. And I think Michael Schumacher just about to come out as well. Yes, he is indeed in the 2002 car. So both Ferraris now coming onto the track, and we're beginning to see a few more cars coming out. David Coulthard is on track at this point, and again we're likely to see them do one lap or so, come back into the pits, make a systems check, and then go back out. Now, Peter, I gather you've got some interesting stats for us.
Well, yes, just listening to Alan McNish talking a little bit earlier, I was thinking how refreshing it is to see a guy aged 32 with this much fire and this much determination to do well. And in Formula One, where most of the young guys appear to be in their very early 20s, it's great to see. It's worth remembering, of course, that this man behind me, Felipe Massa, 20 years old, makes him the 3rd youngest point scorer in the history of Formula One, behind Chris Amon and Jenson Button. And that's very impressive position for Felipe Massa in the record book there. But equally, I have to say, Alan McNish, age 32, doing a great job for Toyota. Yeah,
I quite agree with that, Peter. Spot on. He's really determined, really focused, and let's hope he can keep that up throughout the course of the season. Great view we're watching right now from on board with Rubens Barrichello. There's a camera we've got right at the side of the cockpit, and that gives us a fantastic view. Hopefully we'll get more of that as we go through the course of the weekend. Climbing up that steep hill. It's much steeper than it looks. There we are. Look, you're going past all the grandstands here, John, and gives us a spectacular view. He is slowing down and coming in, but some great scenes.
Yeah, but bearing in mind the story about so many drivers complaining about the bumps in the straight, this camera position will give us a very, very clear view of Rubens Barrichello when he's going down either pit straight or the back straight as to how much bumping is going on. Now, of course, on camera it never looks quite as severe as a driver will experience it, but nonetheless, view that we have here on F1 Live.
So there is the view down the start-finish area. Let's take a look what was going on here. David Coulthard coming into the pits a moment ago, weaving around a bit now. That would be that maybe David has picked up some sort of problem. I'm surprised he's doing that, unless he just picked up a little bit of muck on the tyres as he came down on that lap, and he's just trying to clean them off a little bit.
There's no obvious reason. Coulthard's just been out and in, and you see a driver doing that actually when he's maybe just about to run out of fuel, but you wouldn't expect a car having just left the pits or a non-official, it's just a practice session, to do something like that. So I'm sure we'll find out from David a little later as to what it was that caused him to want to wander around the entry of the pit lane.
Up the hill, here comes Kimi Raikkonen, his teammates in the other McLaren Mercedes. Raikkonen, his first season with the team, of course, taking over the mantle of Mika Hakkinen. He's coming back into the pits as well. And Mika Hakkinen always was brilliant here in Interlagos, I have to say. 3 pole positions, and in fact, each time he was on pole, those 3 occasions, David Coulthard was alongside him on the front row. So McLaren have had some great qualifying runs here in the past. Hakkinen always just seemed to have the edge in qualifying over Coulthard at this particular track. Today, David Coulthard will have the opportunity, perhaps, to get the McLaren up amongst the Ferraris and the Williams BMWs in qualifying.
Well, I think the thing that Mika Hakkinen had was he had this blinding speed. Also, he could drive a car that was a front-end car more than a rear-end car, and that really mitigated against David Coulthard. And on the occasion when Coulthard gets a car that suits his particular style of driving, Coulthard is very, very quick. But Häkkinen's now in retirement. Young Finn Kimi Raikkonen is there to keep David Coulthard honest. And remember, Raikkonen also very reminiscent of Häkkinen in the car setup that he likes.
Well, they're going to have to battle with Ferrari, as I mentioned, and with Williams BMW. Both Ralf Schumacher and Juan Pablo Montoya should be in excellent shape here this weekend. Peter, I gather you're just outside their garage right now.
Yeah, I can't stay away from this garage, Ben. Talk about atmosphere of calm efficiency. It looks great at the moment at Williams. Of course, they're leading the Constructors' Championship. That's a given. But the interesting point is it's the first time they've led this championship since 1997. Back then, it was an interesting year. Ferrari took the lead away from them in the summer, and then Williams clinched the Constructors' Championship at the Japanese Grand Prix in 97. So it was an interesting year. Could be a similar situation in 2002. Let's wait and see.
Well, yes, I mean, they would love to repeat some of the victories that they had in the mid-90s. Damon Hill, Jacques Villeneuve taking the World Drivers' titles. Damon himself having a superb victory here in a wet Grand Prix back in 1996. And then Jacques going on to dominate this Grand Prix in 1997. He got the full set. He got pole position, fastest lap, and the race win. And in the back of the BAR garage there is Villeneuve's manager, as he is now, not boss of BAR, Craig Pollock, so still very much on the scene.
Well, he's only on the scene because he is Jacques Villeneuve's manager, and we believe, I think Jacques Villeneuve's contract must be the most public knowledge of any driver's contract in Formula One. The contract stipulates that Craig Pollock has to be available on site at every Grand Prix, and it is an uncomfortable situation, I'm sure, for Craig, as it is for David Richards and maybe other people within the team, that up until the start of this season Pollock was the boss of the team. Now he's just relegated to being the manager of Villeneuve. Nevertheless, I'm sure some of the engineers will turn around to Pollock expecting an instruction. Well, sorry, wrong guy. David Richards is your man these days.
He is indeed. He is the boss man. We're looking at Takuma Sato once again flicking into the oversteer as he goes through the Senna S. And Takuma will have his work cut out here today, as we heard, picking up a penalty from yesterday. Now, I gather, Peter, you have some more news regarding this Ferrari tyre situation that we were talking about earlier.
Well, I have with me Pierre de Pasquier of Michelin. Pierre, interesting situation developing Ferrari and Bridgestone there. What is your understanding of how many tyres Michael Schumacher will have made available to him for qualifying?
It's difficult for us to answer, because definitely the answer has to come from the FIA. They have the rules, they have we say in French, les gardiens du temple, the guards of constitution. And it's up to them to look what's happening there. I don't blame anybody to try anything that they can to be more competitive. That's fine. That's the game in mechanical sport. But there is a rule. There is a sanctioning entity that role, that job is to see what's happened and make a decision about it. So I'm not aware of any development this morning particularly. So I don't know. I saw Michael's using the 2002. 5 minutes ago. That's it.
But if he goes out in the 2001 and it is clear that he has had more than his 4 sets made available, will this change things in the future in the way you operate?
The spirit of the rule is to limit the cost, is to have an amount of tire used by each driver per weekend. And it's very possible to do, or mounting more wheels but using only the 10 sets for the weekend, or playing games with wheels. And for example, it's possible for a qualifying session to have 4 sets given by the FIA to qualify with. if you have a handicap, mechanical, it's not a handicap, it's a mechanical decision to have that kind of difference, which I suppose it's an advantage. They have to deal with it, which is, for example, either you have the two options. That's one way to think about it. The other way is, for example, to believe in 2002 have 3 sets for 2002 and 1 set is off for 2001. There is many possibilities, but it's up to the FIA.
Okay, we have to wait and see. One other question. We saw a lot of punctures yesterday. Has the track been cleaned correctly tonight? And why were the puncture tyres not replaced by the FIA?
I don't think it's fair, because when you are with a needle, we had on the McNish car, we had 2 needles in the tire. We found them, so we knew what it was. It was not a car defect, was not a hazard or anything. So it's just giving a handicap to somebody for nothing. I don't like this kind of decision. It has to be checked carefully, but people are competent to see what's happened. If it's a tire damage, fine, that's damage, that's racing. But if it's a needle in the tire, I mean, it's an unfair handicap.
Okay, thank you very much, Pierre. Good luck.
Thank you, bye-bye. Thanks.
So Pierre Dupasquier of Michelin taking us through the through the ramifications a little bit. Just to clarify it again, John, they have 10 sets of tyres they can use over the whole weekend. 3 sets they have to use on the Friday, which basically then leaves them 7 sets to use today and tomorrow, doesn't it? And the problem is how many sets of tyres Michael's going to be allowed, considering he's got the 2 cars to use.
Okay, I'll try and go through it again, and I think that there is confusion about how they're looking at the rules. But basically, for qualifying, you're allowed 16 tyres, 8 front, 8 rear, which are going to be randomly chosen by the FIA's technical delegate, which are the only dry weather tyres which such car, I emphasise such car, may use in qualifying practice.
Oh, we've just got Bernoldi having a little minor spin there. Doesn't look like anything too much. That's down at turn 4. Yes, there we are. I think he's kept it running, and hopefully we'll see him back into action. And in fact, the yellow is cleared.
And he's just talking back to the team. But let's get back to this tyre thing, because this is important. It's going to hinge on what decision is made prior to qualifying. But because Ferrari have got 2 different cars.
So should I continue or not? Try to do another 1 lap, Enrique, to check if the tyre are badly spotted. I don't think the tyre is spotted. I think it's okay. Okay, so you do 1 slow lap and then try another one.
Let's get back to this Ferrari thing. Because they've got 2 different cars and different rear rims, they're caught in a situation where they cannot literally take the tyres off the 2002 car. Now, this is Bernoldi spinning. Yeah. They cannot take those tyres, wheels and tyres off, and fit them on the 2001 car. So what they've done, they've come up with a solution which in fact is not, in my view, unfair. What would happen is if Michael goes out, for example, does 2 runs in the 2002 car, has a mechanical problem or has a shunt, he then can jump into the 2001 car. He will have 2 sets of wheels and tyres available to him for the 2001 car. All they are doing is enabling themselves to run the spare car, which they are fully entitled to do, and they shouldn't be penalised because there's a different technical specification to the wheel rims. But of course it is a precedent, and the rule doesn't specify what happens in this type of situation because it's never really arisen before. So the judgment will be based on the fact, and I think that's where it has to stand.
Well, we'll wait and see. Hopefully we'll hear later on what the FIA stewards have decided. Look on board with Juan Pablo Montoya. Look at him getting his head over to the left there through the centre S, building the speed up. Now he's on the straight that runs down to the corner. Look at the bumps. That's where you can really see the jolts coming up through the driver's spine. And that's why, as Peter said earlier on, so many of them are getting massages between sessions here.
And again, just as they come up into the Ferradura, again you can see the front of the car chattering. The teams have got to run these cars relatively stiff, it's a relative term, because otherwise the aerodynamic qualities of the car are affected if the car has got too much fore and aft pitch movement or too much side to side movement.
Fantastic pictures here on Digital F1, riding with Juan Pablo Montoya on a glorious day in Brazil. We saw a shot a moment ago of some of the Colombian fans that have turned up, and he's got a huge contingent once again of fans, more here than just about anywhere else in the world. It's that much easier to get to for them, and the Colombians will be making plenty of noise alongside the Brazilian fans in the grandstands. fastest at the moment, and there he is. Juan Pablo Montoya takes that fastest time. Olivier Panis had set the pace in the earlier part of the session, and once again over the curbs as he accelerates onto another lap.
And in fact, Montoya's lap is now within about thousandth of a second of what David Coulthard attained after 2 sessions on Friday afternoon. Coulthard also looking pretty quick. Personal best, Ralf Schumacher, riding with Ralf, he's coming in. He was very quick. First and second sectors, he's abandoned the lap. Now whether that's a technical problem or whether there's something he wants to come in and do to the car, he knows the car is going to be quick, but he's back into the pits. Meanwhile, Montoya once again personally and fastest of everybody in that first sector.
Notice the 2 Jaguars are reasonably well up at the moment, but in this early stages of the first free practice session of Saturday, times aren't terribly meaningful, so we'll wait and see how the session turns out. Ralf Schumacher just being pushed back into the Williams garage for the moment as Montoya continues on a fairly quick lap.
And David Coulthard, we're not looking at him now, it's Pedro de la Rosa in the Jaguar, but Coulthard could easily end up being quickest of this session. We're just some moments into it, so we look and see David Coulthard 0.736, the first man to break that 1 minute 15 second barrier. Remember, 1:13.7 was the pole position time in 2001, so we should see that coming under threat very shortly, certainly at the end of this second session this morning.
Yeah, look at the sky, that wonderful shot, absolutely cloudless, and the colours of the cars in all their glory, which is great to see. Pedro de la Rosa then, who's worked hard with Jaguar trying to get the car up to pace. Remember, they are running the R03, this year's car. They decided not to go back to last year's car after really thinking about it very seriously and doing back-to-back testing in Spain last week. De La Rosa working hard at trying to get a little bit more performance out of the machine, and next week I think it is, their wind tunnel, their new wind tunnel opens up, and they'll be able to get some meaningful wind tunnel work done over the next month or so.
Well, there you see David Coulthard again looking to see improvement on the fastest lap so far of the weekend, 1:14.736. Coulthard decides to complete this lap, which I suspect he is going to do. Yes, he is. He's certainly quickest of anybody in the second sector. He comes across the line. 0.63 hundredths of a second, so a fraction of an improvement, but 2 consistent laps in the 1 minute 14s, and that's the progress that Coulthard's been looking for.
Let's ride on board with him for a moment here.
Fourth quickest, truly, in the Renault, fourth quickest.
Across the line for David, and that lap a half a second down on his previous best. A number of cars on track now, it's really getting much busier. Oh, look at Michael Schumacher's pushing hard, and you could see the back end of the car, and look at the reflexes once again from the reigning world champion. Had it all under control, and he's pushing.
And he's also quickest so far of everybody in that first sector. Michael Schumacher, this is his first really serious run. He's done 3 laps. This is his 4th lap of the morning. So he comes up through this very technical and very mechanical section of the Interlagos circuit. Again, traction control, now drops down. Well, that's as close to flat as I have heard.
Changing up halfway through. That was the corner we were talking about earlier, Megulo corner. Very fast and good out of that final Juncal corner as well, up the hill.
Ben, if he completes this lap, making the progress he's doing, he's going to be in the 1 minute 13s. It'll be either a very high 13.999 or a 14.001, I reckon.
Well, look at that, 14.1, very close, but half a second faster than Coulthard in the McLaren. Well, he was pushing hard, you could see that he was pushing hard, but that's a good performance from the new Ferrari.
So that's only about 4/10 away from pole. In fact, he had lost a fraction of seconds of time in that last sector, so all the work that he did, the strong work in the middle sector, he shaved a tenth of a second off that. Otherwise, he would have broken the 1:14.
Well, his teammate's on track at the moment, Rubens Barrichello, and he's just gone second fastest. So both Ferraris, the new one and the old one, proving to be quick here this morning. Still early days, temperature still climbing, and remember, as the temperature comes up, that seems to have sorted the Michelins in the past. Now, the Williams drivers, Montoya is 4th at the moment, and Ralf Schumacher hasn't done so much at the moment. He's down in 19th place, just out on track, and I guess
engine problem at the moment we're just trying to fix.
Right, so that's bad news. Let's hope that you can get that sorted out. What was the general feeling between the drivers yesterday after the first 3 practice sessions?
Things were going fairly much to plan yesterday. Obviously Friday is more of a setup day than Saturday.
There's always a lot of work going on that, of course, we're not privileged to, because you're working on so many different fuel loads and tyre setups. You've got the choice of 2 different Michelin compounds. Is it going to be a difficult choice or a fairly easy choice, would you say, this weekend to choose which tyre to go for?
I think it's going to be an easier choice than what Malaysia was. I'm pretty much convinced what we're going to run.
So a more clear-cut decision this time. OK, well, Dickie, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll let you get back to the all-important work of running your 2 guys. Thank you.
Well, in the meantime, Nick Heidfeld's in 7th place, but for the Brits who may be watching this morning, it is Jenson Button who is the 2nd quickest of the Brits. He is in 4th place. He's just gone back into the Renault pits. Button on a 1:15.014, and that's approximately a second faster than he achieved on Friday.
Well, we're just looking down at the classification so far. We can see that further down the list, the 2 arrows are very evenly matched again, as they were yesterday, Frentzen and Bernoldi. Mark Webber 15th fastest, but we're looking here at Rubens Barrichello, and he's on a pretty quick lap. Let's just hear from Peter for a moment.
Thanks, Ben. Yes, I was interested to hear what Dickie Stanford said there about the choice of tyre being somewhat simpler than Malaysia. Talking to the teams as best one can this morning, it looks as if most of them are considering 2-stop strategies for the race tomorrow, which may be why that tyre choice is a little bit more clear-cut. Also, a little bit of information about Rubens Barrichello. He did not have a good day yesterday. Had problems with the traction control on the car, which led him to spin. And also, he said he was having trouble with the downshifting as well, which is probably interrelated, of course, but not a good day. So Rubens obviously, well, the mechanics have obviously got the car sorted this morning.
Right, OK, thank you very much for that, Peter. We're just watching Kimi Raikkonen on track at this point. Michael Schumacher fastest so far, Barrichello 2nd, Coulthard 3rd, Button 4th, and Kimi Raikkonen, well, just 13th at the moment, but of course he's just putting in his first few laps, really. A little bit of a rear wing change looking likely here at the Ferrari garage on the new car, I think.
Well, either they're taking the rear wing out to get access at another part of the car, or simply they're just deciding to have a look at the rear wing specification and take it off and make a modification, put it back on again. But in the meantime, the difference, David Coulthard in terms of speed 3:15, Montoya 3:16, but Rubens Barrichello within 0.02 of a second of Schumacher, and that's very little difference between the 2001 and 2002 car. Right now, Ralf Schumacher out on track. He's gone up to 5th quickest, and currently, in fact, Ralf Schumacher has gone up. He stays in 5th place. We're just looking to see another change. Highest top speed in that second intermediate of 255 kilometres, 155 miles an hour as they come into that section of the circuit.
Yes, and as we saw, Montoya with the fastest speed trap figure overall at 316 kilometres per hour. So we're getting very close to the 200 mile an hour mark at the end of the straight. Now, Ralf Schumacher's on a good lap. We're watching Rubens Barrichello in the pits. For now, let's ride with Ralf. He's on a quick lap here. Let's just watch him.
Oh, he lost, he was wide.
he must be coming into the pits if they're telling him to cool the brakes.
Well, he made an error in the second of those very tight right-hand corners. He lost time. He was certainly quick in the first segment, then lost time, and they decided just to call him in. And of course, they're saying keep the brakes cool.
Right, so just looking at Jacques Villeneuve at the moment on track, things settling down in this first free practice session, the two Ferraris, 1 and 2. Now, Peter, I think you've got some information regarding the action down there in the pit lane and practice starts.
That's right, Ben. It's not really information, but just it's always great sport on this session in the morning to see the drivers starting to do practice starts from their pit stop area. Laying rubber, of course, because it gives them a little bit more grip in the race. So if you look down the pit lane here, if we can get the camera around here, you can see lots of rubber all the way down. And it's great fun watching them driving the clutch. And we can do it here now as R03 comes in. Hopefully he'll do a practice start. Mega. Okay, back to you.
Thanks, Peter. That's Takuma, of course, isn't it?
Actually, it was Takuma Sato, sorry about that.
Yeah, Takuma Sato in the Jordan. We're looking at pictures of Nelson Piquet now, and alongside Nicky Lauda there on the pit wall. John, it's a shame you're not down there with them, really, having a good old chat.
Well, we certainly had a very eventful New Year's Eve in Austria one year. We had a Nicky Lauda lookalike contest with Nicky, Nelson and myself, and surprisingly Nelson won that Nicky Lauda lookalike contest.
Well, looking at the shape of the noses,
they were teammates, of course, in Brabham, and Nelson went on to win 3 World Championships, 2 of them, of course, in Brabhams.
Now, this is a little replay of Ralph looking frustrated a moment or two ago when he came back into the Williams pit, so things perhaps not going quite according to plan for him. On board now with Kimi Räikkönen. Let's see if this moves him up the order. No, it doesn't. So it looks like they're doing some fairly consistent race pace running here for Kimi Räikkönen.
Well, if they are planning on doing a 2-stop, as was suggested, certainly the times that Räikkönen is doing now would indicate, well, that would be a medium to low fuel load with a reasonably fresh set of tyres, but not certainly anything like a qualifying run. Michael Schumacher and Rubens Barrichello have got that pretty much locked out. Half a second clear of Coulthard in 3rd place.
Yes, then Button in 4th, as we said, then Ralph 5th, Montoya 6th, then Villeneuve, Panis, Felipe Massa in the Sauber, Nick Heidfeld in the other Sauber, then the 2 Jordans, separated by just a tenth of a second, the Renault of Jarno Trulli, then Räikkönen, Frentzen, De La Rosa and Irvine. The 2 Jaguars, again, very close at this point. Enrique Bernoldi down in 5th place, ahead of Mark Webber. And then Mika Salo and Alan McNish, both quite a long way down the list this morning.
Ben, there's no surprise in that whatsoever. I think they did a low, well, they obviously did a low fuel tank run for McNish. Great to see him up in 3rd place. Let's get back to the real world. They've got to do your work, and that's why they're currently running 20th and 21st. But that will improve in qualifying.
A little bit of chat going on here with Takuma Sato. So some great stuff on the radio there from Takuma Sato, explaining a little bit, John, about the handling of the car on various parts around the track.
Yes, we're talking about turn 11, which is the Magulu corner. That's that downhill left-hander, which is very, very bumpy all the way through. You want to try and take it flat, but the sensors are saying, I'm not ready for it, I can't do it. So in fact, as you watch Jarno Trulli going through that very corner, there you see it, looking back at it. One of those corners you always feel you can go flat, but you never quite have the commitment or the courage, unless you've got a car that is with you 100%.
On board here with Jarno Trulli, trying to move his way up from 13th position currently. But again, I think just doing some consistent laps at this point. 9th fastest for him. A little bit of smoke there at the back. I don't think that was anything to worry about. We'll keep an eye on it. Jenson Button sitting in the garage, waiting for another opportunity to come out. Completed 5 laps so far. One of the stars of the last race in Malaysia, that's for sure. Came so close to taking his first ever podium finish. In the end, he had to settle for 4th, which nonetheless matches his best previous Formula One result. He was just so close to getting that podium. He was bitterly disappointed afterwards.
And of course, we couldn't see on screen that he actually had I think it was a rear roll bar or a link was actually broken. But for Jensen, it felt like he was driving around in 3 wheels. He keeps talking about, I was driving the last 3 laps in 3 wheels. Well, sorry, Jensen, we saw 4 wheels on your car. But as a driver, we understand what the problem was. But of course, it doesn't communicate. We thought it was all mechanical or maybe a fuel factor. But disappointment indeed. But a superb drive in Malaysia for Jensen Button. The kind of performance to bring him back to the level of performance we saw in the back end of his debut year in 2000.
David Coulthard heading back out of the pits. A quick note that the Formula 3000s are racing here at Interlagos this weekend, and Sébastien Bourdais, the Frenchman driving for Supernova Racing, will start that race from pole position ahead of Thomas Enger and Brazilians Mario Haberfeld and Rodrigo Scarafino. So that should prove to be an interesting race, and Sébastien Bourdais being considered by many people as another potential superstar, and it would be good to have another quick Frenchman around. Now let's take a look at what was going on here. Enrique Bernoldi going past Eddie Irvine.
Well, Eddie was trying to get out of the way. Bernoldi had the momentum up, and it's maybe the two of them are just sort of tussling. But it's this happens all the time. It's frustrating for somebody like Bernoldi. Irvine would be maybe dismissive of Bernoldi. Oh, it's only an Arrows, I don't care. No doubt he did try to get out of the way, and on occasion sometimes you can do better than you've done.
Well, I wonder if there might not be a bit of needle between Jaguar and Arrows this year, John. They're both running the same engine, and they both want to prove to Ford that they've got the better chassis.
Well, they've got different tyres as well, so as Eddie Irvine said, if you ain't got Michelin's, you ain't going to be in the race. Eddie says a lot of things, doesn't he? Sometimes he does make sense, but other times he should just shut it.
Well, we'll see how he gets on here today. Irvine down in 18th place currently in the early stages of the morning free practice session from Interlagos. And I hope you're enjoying unrivaled pictures, unrivaled coverage on F1 Digital as we once again go right into the pit garages. This is with McLaren Mercedes, and you can see just how much hard work goes on in these pit garages. We watch out on track the drivers doing their stuff, but the engineers, the team, is what makes the difference, and we can certainly get an opportunity to see them at work here as well. Now, Michael Schumacher's out on track. Let's see whether he's putting in some quick laps now. It looks like this one's quick. The middle segment very fast, and it's a new fastest time for the Ferrari.
So a very small fraction of an improvement, but again another, an understeer as he came down through the centre S's. Missed the apex of the corner, ran wide, had to probably check the throttle a little bit to make sure the car didn't run off the track.
Well, we're just looking inside the Jaguar pit there at Eddie Irvine, and Peter's standing just outside. Peter.
I am indeed, yes, reflecting on the situation with the new car here at Jaguar, which they've of course decided to race following that back-to-back test in Spain. Talking to John Russell, the designer of the car, that was much more than just a mere back-to-back. It was a difficult thing, of course, to get the old car out and to get it right up to comparable spec, and they ran exactly the same tyres, exactly the same fuel load, exactly the same engine mileage. It was probably the most comprehensive back-to-back that any team could ever have committed itself to. And of course, John Russell's reputation to some extent was on the line. The ex-Williams engineer, now at Jaguar, has obviously designed both cars, and Eddie Irvine was saying quite loudly that he felt the old car would be quicker, and John did a very, very even back-to-back. And it was Pedro de la Rosa's times that really convinced Jaguar to forge ahead with the new car. When Eddie jumped into the car, the new car set up by Pedro, he almost matched Pedro's times, but it was Pedro who really led it there. So John Russell is now saying, from his point of view, he's now got a cleaner path for designing the sort of car that needs to be built than ever before. He's very happy with the new structure, and I think for the first time we might actually see Jaguar taking some major steps forward.
Well, that's good news, Peter. Thank you very much. They've got a new aerodynamicist come in as well, joining the Jaguar team. Ben Akathangalu coming over from the Renault Formula One team. So interesting new input on the aerodynamic side, and that's with that new wind tunnel. Hopefully they'll find some improvements.
But also they've got to work on the drivers, because they've got two drivers who have got diametrically opposed views of how a car should be set up. And currently it's Pedro de la Rosa who's getting the best out of the car. He's a driver that can live with a little bit of understeer. Unfortunately for Eddie Irvine, he can't have any understeer whatsoever in a car. and he was considered to be slightly unproductive in Malaysia. And right now, the differences between De La Rosa and Irvine in this session, well, they're 17th and 18th. De La Rosa fastest by 1/10 of a second.
On track, as you can see, is Juan Pablo Montoya. We saw Coulthard a moment ago. Coulthard currently third fastest, just ahead of Jenson Button. But interesting looking at the speed trap figures. Coulthard much nearer the top. In fact, he tops the main one, the fastest one, 314 kilometres per hour. Although, no, the second one, Montoya's at 316 kilometres per hour. But it's interesting to see McLaren Mercedes at the top of the speed trap figures. And perhaps we thought that the Mercedes wasn't producing quite as much power. It could well be they're not running as much downforce as the opposition, but it's still promising to see that.
Well, I think what's going on in this session is that one team, Williams, BMW, for example, are doing one particular test. McLaren, Mercedes-Benz are doing a different test. We don't know how much fuel they have on board. That is a major bearing on the acceleration out of the corner onto the pit straight up. That's a very steep incline. So really, until we get into qualifying, we'll only then have an idea, and of course that's only going to be in a qualifying context.
Again, look at the car bottoming out on the main straight, hitting the bumps as it goes over the start-finish line. The plank underneath taking a lot of wear here. In qualifying, with much less fuel on board, they can run the car nice and low and keep it tight. But in the race, of course, they load it up with fuel. They have to raise the ride height to stop that wear becoming a problem. Remember, the planks are checked afterwards. The rubbing strip at the bottom of the car checked after the race to make sure it's within limits.
Well, Ralph's time is a second away from the quickest so far, and it's Ralph's personal best. Yeah, is he changing down or just, I don't know, it sounded an unusual place to change down. Whether Schumacher has decided to, he's certainly throwing the car around as he drops down through the Pinheirino corner. And that's my best Portuguese. Locks it up. I think he's going to forget this lap. He's made 2 errors so far. He might as well abandon it. He was quick at the beginning of the lap. He got a very good exit out of the corner. We're just coming up to now. But then in the midsection of the circuit, he lost time in 2 corners. Let's maybe start all over again.
Yeah, he still managed to set a pretty good middle sector, but not as good as he could have done with those mistakes. So maybe it'll work out on the next lap. This could improve on his 6th position at the moment, but I don't think it's enough to go fastest. He does go 3rd, so a good personal improvement, but it could have been even better, John.
Yes, I mean, I was surprised. I mean, to see him jumping from where he was 5th up to 3rd, having had those 2 errors in the middle part of the circuit. I suspected that his rhythm might have been lost. It looked like he was about to come in, but he didn't. He stayed out, so he's 3rd quickest.
Now, new tyres on the McLaren of Kimi Räikkönen, so this might give us a little bit of an understanding of how quick he's going at the moment. Currently, he's quite a long way down the list in 14th, but I think these laps coming up should move him much, much further up the list. Just getting to grips with the car around this Interlagos circuit. The second time that he's been here, of course. Raced for Sauber last year, and now at McLaren Mercedes, and doing a fine job in the first 2 Grand Prix. 3rd place in Australia. Mechanical problems putting him out from a pretty much definite podium. Could have been a 2nd place possibly in Malaysia. And we've got a Jordan
Sato, and that's just up at the end of the start-finish straight. Sato got it wrong and he's done a donut. Kept it running. Almost does another little quick spin. So probably a fairly high-speed moment for once eventful year for the Japanese. And look at that, Kimi Räikkönen 1:13.900, 2/10 of a second away from last year's pole position.
Well, I tell you what, the times are going to be fast today, and that pole record from last year of Michael Schumacher looks to be well under threat this weekend. We'll wait to see what happens, but they're already in the 1:13 bracket. 1:13.7 last year's pole, 1:14.191 there for Rubens Barrichello as he crosses the line, and that's only a couple of thousand slower than his best lap so far in this session.
But what was significant about Barrichello's time was he was the quickest car from the exit of the corner onto the straight up across to start-finish line. So Ferrari working very hard to get the traction and the drive out of that corner balanced so as he can get into the top 3.
Räikkönen onto another quick lap here. He's already taken the fastest time, and that middle sector, another good time from him, but not an improvement, although slightly faster on the speed trap. But the speed trap's just on the exit of that very daunting downhill left-hander, so an important place to be fast. And Kimi, as brave as they come, setting the highest speed trap figure just there. That next lap, as you can see, 0.4 of a second slower than that previous fastest. And I would imagine we'll see him come in a moment or 2.
Well, clearly the first flying lap on a new set of tyres is when the time's going to be done. So probably in qualifying you're going to see teams running about 4 sets of tyres, and it'll be the first flying lap will be the lap that counts. If you get held up in traffic or you make an error, you can almost say, well, that set's going to be a wasted set.
Jenson Button currently in 7th place. Let's just remind you of the positions. Raikkonen now heads the timesheets ahead of the 2 Ferraris of Michael Schumacher and Rubens Barrichello. Then Ralf Schumacher 4th in the Williams ahead of Coulthard, Montoya, Button, as we said, in 7th. Heidfeld 8th, Massa 9th. Villeneuve is 10th ahead of Jarno Trulli in 11th. Then it's Pat, Fisichella, Takuma Sato, Frentzen and Bernoldi 15th and 16th. And behind them De La Rosa, Ryan McNish, Webber, Salo and Alex Young at the back.
Well, just under 3 minutes, 2 minutes 45 seconds. Michael Schumacher has gone out. He will get back across the start-finish line, of course, before the checkered flag comes out. So he will get one flying lap in before the flag comes out. Always you see Ferrari taking the opportunity when there's about 4 minutes remaining. They don't just sit in the pits and let the time run away. They use it productively. So let's watch what Michael Schumacher, he will be midway round the lap, going down the back straight, then the climb up into that Ferradura corner. As we continue to look inside the Arrows pits and get a look at those keels, see those sections of, those are chassis. Those are not just parts of bodywork, those are parts of the chassis, and they're used to locate the front bottom wishbones, the front leg of those bottom wishbones. It's a very difficult structural job to carry out that. The twin keel approach to aerodynamics being certainly triumphed by many in the journalistic side. Ferrari and Williams principally steering clear of it because it is a very difficult engineering job to carry out.
Yes, indeed. Well, Barrichello just hopping out of his Ferrari with a little bit of time left in this free practice. Looks like he's done for the first 45-minute session. There's then a gap, and then they'll be back out for the second session of 45 minutes. Meanwhile, we're just taking a look at the Heidfeld car, just heading down through the Senna S. Nick Heidfeld driving the Sauber, currently in 8th position at this stage. They looked very good in the first free practice session yesterday, although the Michelin-tired cars tended to go slightly better in the second session. Temperatures are still climbing, and we'll see whether that has a bearing on proceedings here this afternoon, although the Bridgestone runners reckon they do have a better tyre here in Brazil than they had in Malaysia.
Well, Michael Schumacher reasonably quick. We have still got Nick Heidfeld on camera watching Nick in 8th place. He'll also get another, well, yes, well, I'm not sure whether he will get another lap in or not. Should do. In fact, Michael Schumacher not that far behind him. In fact, the next car behind Heidfeld, so if Heidfeld gets across the line and starts another lap, there's still a chance that Schumacher also could get in one additional lap.
Great close-up view of the car hard at work around this bumpy, demanding track. And Mark Webber was telling us in the coverage yesterday, you don't get any rest as a driver here. Mark Webber's first time driving at Interlagos, and he was talking about not only is it the bumps, but the fact is there's not really much of a chance to draw breath even on the straight. Michael Schumacher's just set the fastest time overall, 1:13.837. So again, even closer to last year's pole, still a 1/10 of a second away from the best from last year, and the checkered flag is out.
And he's got another lap to do before he then has to come back into the pits. So a stonking lap from Michael Schumacher, and currently this is fractionally, you're talking about tens or hundreds of seconds quicker than on his lap that he's just now gone 13.837 on. So now we look to see what will happen on the second split time. So far we've seen it with the Michelin runners, the first flying lap is without doubt the one they can get the job done. Schumacher still pushing very hard.
Looked really nice through there, didn't it? Looked beautifully balanced. The drivers have been saying about this 2002 car that it does have fantastic balance. They can really do what they like with it. Certainly that's what they found in testing in Barcelona. And just watching the car through some of those tight corners, it does look as though he's got it where he wants it. He can almost make it do what he wants, although this lap isn't going to be any faster. And again, it shows that it's that first flying lap that seems to be working.
In fact, he's coming across start-finish line now. Let's see the difference for 0.4 of a second, about the same as Michelin, in fact. But the whole philosophy that Rory Byrne and Ross Brawn and everybody at Ferrari have worked on the aerodynamic side is to give the back end, the rear end of the car, great stability, so as you can really lean in the car, you can really throw the car into a corner. Everybody else tends to work more in the front to make the car grip, make the front end bite. But if you've got a back end that's get wayward, well, you know, you can't use the front end bite.
Patrick Head having a good look at the car a moment ago. This was in the Williams BMW pit, of course, and certainly a bit of studying going on there. Dave Ryan of McLaren Mercedes having a quick chat with Ron Dennis. At the end of this session, David Coulthard ends up in 5th position, but don't read too much into the times at the end of this session. Again, we'll probably see more representative times at the end of the next 45-minute session. But Coulthard still will be reasonably pleased. A 1 minute 14.673, right in the middle of the two Williams BMWs. Ralph just ahead of him and Montoya just behind him.
But just looking into the McLaren garage, you sort of sense that McLaren really haven't come to terms with Mika Häkkinen's decision to rest or go into retirement, and that they're having to readjust to have David Coulthard as the senior driver in the team, the driver of experience, and the young and relatively inexperienced Finn Kimi Räikkönen. And it's maybe going to take a little bit longer for the team to, adapt to a new regime.
It was such a long-lasting driver pairing between David and Mika. Of course, it changes things when you have a new driver in the team. Everybody getting used to that. Michael coming in again, just laying a little bit of extra rubber down. It all helps. It's a test of the systems, but it also puts that bit more rubber down that will help them in the course of the race to get out from a pit stop as quickly as possible. Quite a big rear wing they've got on that Ferrari. As you can see, we saw them messing around with that earlier on. And, well, it's producing the pace, isn't it? A 1:13.837 sees Michael Schumacher fastest in the first free practice of Saturday morning, ahead of the McLaren Mercedes of Kimi Räikkönen. So it does show that the McLarens are going well. Barrichello in the older Ferrari, 3rd fastest, ahead of Ralf Schumacher, David Coulthard and Juan Pablo Montoya. Jenson Button 7th for Renault, ahead of Nick Heidfeld and Felipe Massa, the two Saubers, once again trying to be best of the rest after Ferrari, McLaren and Williams. Then it's Villeneuve. Again, a promising time from Villeneuve, but will that be shown in qualifying? That's the big question. I somewhat doubt it, but we'll wait to see. Behind Villeneuve, we've then got Jarno Trulli, again slightly outpaced by his teammate, but it's not an important session from that point of view. Panis next up. We've got Fisichella and Sato, the two Jordans together, then the two Arrows together of Frentzen and Bernoldi, the two Jags together, and the two Toyotas. It's all very neat and tidy, and we'll have the two Minardis at the back as well, all team formation in the second half of the grid.
Well, it's a very close grid, and teams themselves, the driver differences are virtually negligible.
So that's the end of the first 45-minute session. John, they don't have an awful lot of time to make changes to the car before they have to be back out again.
30 minutes between these two sessions. It's really just enough to have a very brief debriefing and discuss what they might want to do in this 45-minute session, because this is the session that will lead into qualifying, a very important session in my view.
Now, Peter, I gather you've caught up with a very important guest at Interlagos this weekend.
I have indeed, none other than Nelson Piquet. Nelson, great to see you. You don't look a day over 50.
Yeah, it's coming close. In August it'll be 50 this year.
Well, fantastic to see you here. Now, you've just spent the session up on the pit wall with Niki Lauda here, watching the Jaguars. What's your input?
Well, I'm trying to him to get a car to me to drive for the next races. He said I'm too old for that. I feel so, but I want to make some money.
I'm sure that's not the case at all, Nelson. But what do you think about all this telemetry and all the data they have nowadays?
Well, it's fantastic, the electronic is a big difference between the races and 20 years ago like I was, or 15 years ago and now. And but it's very impressive, all the technology is running, and it's like Niki said, that now every monkey can drive this bloody car, because you don't have to change the gears, you don't have to start to press a button. It's so easy. In our time, the thing was much more complicated, and the car was much more fragile because you didn't have all this electronic to hold up with in our mistakes. If you do mistakes, you break the thing. Now I think if the driver have a lot of talent and no experience at all, he can even do a good job.
What do you think about these drivers getting massage every 2 or 3 hours between the sessions? They're all having massage now.
Well, that's the reason I want to go back to Formula One. Get a team of nice girls to give a massage every 3 hours for me.
Okay, now a serious question, Nelson. If you were given 3 days testing here in the Jaguar, and you were given all the tyres you needed, all the engines you needed, how quickly do you think you could go right now?
Well, 3 years ago, I drove Formula 3 again, really serious, with a very old car. And I was quite quick. I was second or 10 slower than the first guy, but my car was a third car, you know. I think if you really have the time and you go for and you can get right down there, maybe half second slow, something like that. But the point's not there. The point is, when you get 50, to traveling, to go to all the tests, go to all the races, and for sure you don't have the health to do that. You know, to do one race maybe yes, you know, but not whole year round and go around and race. And now I have 7 kids to take care of. I have 2 grandchildren, you know, and you have another priorities in life, you know.
Well, you're a great granddad, I'm sure. Great to see you, and all the best.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Peter. Well, in fact, it's exactly the 22nd anniversary of Nelson Piquet's first win, 30th of March 1980. Great to see him here at Interlagos. And now we're going to take a look back over the highlights of the third practice session of the Brazilian Grand Prix weekend.